lights on the airways hum. Hear the tales of where they're from. Stories whispered, not in lies. Jobs they held through changing times.
Welcome to Amplify Your Signal, the podcast that shares the stories of job seekers beyond the resume. I'm your host, Nicole Roberts, and today's guest brings grit, grace, and hard-won wisdom to a conversation that's as real as it gets. Rachel Cupples is a recruiting strategist who believes in building meaningful, human-centered experiences. She's candid about the chaos of today's job market and deeply committed to making it better for everyone. I can't wait for you to hear this. Rachel, start off by introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel Kitty Cupples. I am a part of the HR community. I am a recruiter. I've been recruiting for a little over 12 years now, and I'm happy to be here.
Love that. You've shared some unforgettable interview stories. What's one that still makes you laugh?
Started out in staffing and then moved in-house, RPO, kind of been all over the place recruiting-wise across my career. But there's one story that to this day still makes me giggle a little bit. So picture this. I'm in a very small conference room that has a capacity for 4 people. There's a large table. We got 2 chairs. I meet a candidate at the lobby, bring them into this conference room. The plan was for it to go like any other interview, to get to know the candidate, hear more about their experience, ask my questions, answer their questions. But during the first few minutes of the interview, I noticed the candidate kept leaning across the table and was staring at me just very intensely. Now, I really, me, I really try to create the most inclusive and open interview experience and space as possible, whether it's in person or virtual or even on the phone. But it got to the point where I could tell that this candidate wasn't listening to my questions. They were just staring at me. I became a little concerned and to be honest, a little uncomfortable. My discomfort came from not knowing what to do. I'd never been in a situation like that. So me being me, I prefer to deal with things head on and directly and with, try and come from a space of respect and empathy and, all of that. I asked them what they were doing. And
What is happening here?
yeah, it was literally that type of situation. Now this happened like 7 or 8 years ago. So it's been a while, but they dismissed it, told me they were nervous, so went back to the interview, asked a few more questions. They started doing it again. And so I asked them how I could support them at this point because I tried to reword the next, the question and they said that they were distracted by my beauty.
Oh, well, bless.
So in that moment, I'm like, oh, it's such a funny story. I let them know that this was a job interview. I tried to keep it very professional.
Yes.
And then the candidate said, look, I got to tell you, I just read a book about soul gazing. I really need a job. And admitted that their resume was made up.
My gosh.
And that they were just hoping basically that they could soul gaze me. I had never heard of the term in my life. I've only Googled it once in my life and it was right after that. I just had to know what was going on here.
Right?
And I do want to share one other thing that just comes to mind. I had another interview. It was in the same year with a different candidate. And it was a similar situation where the candidate found themselves attracted to me and they kept reaching across the table and touching my hand. And I wasn't, reaching out to them. We're sitting in appropriate, space. We had appropriate space between us.
Yeah.
And, pointing out my rings, touching my rings, reached for my hair.
Absolutely not.
So it was extremely uncomfortable. But since these 2 scenarios, I've learned to keep even more space between myself and job seekers and to make sure that my back is never to a wall.
Absolutely.
and that the candidate isn't between me and an exit.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if those are all funny stories. They're problematic, but looking back, I don't want to give away any details or any identifiers of these candidates, but they couldn't have been more opposite humans on the planet. But yeah, that's just not, if job seekers are watching this.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Keep your hands to yourself. You don't need to try and soul gaze, and interviewing it. This isn't the dating game. We're just trying to hire somebody.
It's funny that you say that because so many people will liken recruiting to dating and speed dating to interviewing. And it's like, can somebody please stop saying this? Because not everybody understands nuance or sarcasm, and they are surely showing up looking for a date. And I'm glad nobody tried to soul gaze me. I don't know what I would do if that happened, but
If you haven't looked into it and you want to laugh, like
well, I'm looking it up. We will put
You
that.
are?
I will
Yeah.
put that in the show notes. This is what soul gazing is.
They thought they could control my mind in a way, or gaze into my soul to a point where they could persuade me,
To give them the job?
Yeah, I'm assuming,
Wild.
but yeah,
Absolutely wild.
silly experiences.
I mean, mentioned about the door. I mean, that is something that we learn and teach in employee relations with discipline is if you're in a disciplinary meeting, if you're in a termination meeting, you have the seat closest to the door, closest to the exit, have eyes on the exit at all times, and don't get stuck between somebody and
Right.
I did
You
not even think about that for interviews.
Well, and I had that same training. You and I were talking earlier today about how, my first job in HR, I was an
Yes.
HR coordinator, and,
Right.
I was shadowing, our CPO at the time, learning employee relations and specifically on disciplinary,
Yeah.
scenarios. And yeah, I mean, Ro Rapon, I don't know if she's still practicing HR, but she was a great teacher. But yeah, you just don't think about it in an interview. You think it's sort of not transactional, but that we're all there for a specific reason. It's
Right.
hard to imagine someone else may have ulterior motives.
Yeah.
And the same for job seekers going into interviews.
Yeah.
You may have remembered the story of the time that I was a job seeker. This was a decade ago, and I went to an interview at a place of business. They made me an offer. I turned them down, and then the owner of the company showed up at my doorstep.
What?
Yeah, and there were signs, though, during the interview process that I should have paid attention to that led to that. But it's good just to protect yourself. I'm not trying to scare anybody away from being a recruiter or for being a job seeker, but just know your space, know what's going on around you. I think it's being a woman, I can't speak for men, but I think, specifically, and I think it can be scary at times.
That's why people pick the bear. So yeah, it happens. Yeah. That'll be our soundbite.
Yeah.
And that, ladies and
And
gentlemen,
that's why they
is
keep
what
it there.
So you've mentioned holding roles that felt both energizing and at times deeply challenging. Can you share one experience that shaped how you show up for candidates and hiring teams today?
You and I think both know it's not one experience, but
Never is.
I believe one of the biggest experiences has been my life experience. I'm neurodivergent. I speak about it openly across social media. And I learned that I have ADHD as an adult. Diagnosed, I believe it was in 2013, the same year I became a recruiter and a branch manager of a staffing agency. I mean, it was literally in the same 3 or 4 month period. And just through my own self-discovery of what that means, and different discovering different strengths and areas where not necessarily improvement, but where I could use tools to elevate myself. My eyes were opened along that entire journey. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't just becoming diagnosed and all of a sudden having this epiphany of how inclusive interviewing should be. It was a long journey. But I think when you are self-aware, and it's not neurodivergent trait, but when you become self-aware of your own stuff,
Yeah.
all the stuff, not just the strengths, it's a lot easier, I think, to look at processes, not just recruiting, but processes in general where people are involved from a broader, more inclusive lens. The other thing I'll say, I've always been sort of a lifelong learner. I hardcore dove into it and learned there was this huge community of neurodivergent people, right? That
Mm.
talk about it and connect. And
Mm-hmm.
through hearing other people's experiences, not, I have a very specific experience to me, but hearing other folks' experience, not just in the neurodivergent community, but in the disability community and, underrepresented communities in general,
Yeah.
really, it gave me a desire. Um, and I found my North Star, where I wanted to head, what I wanted to do. And it was to use my skills. I already knew I was learning I was an exceptional recruiter, but how I not only be a recruiter, but help job seekers show up as their best self,
Right.
not coach them, not trying to cheat or just push people through, but how can
Right.
I provide a space and an experience that
Mm-hmm.
allows everyone the opportunity to show up as their best self, to showcase themselves.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and because we're in HR, right? So I worked with somebody once and they were like, I hate interviewing HR people because they know exactly what you're looking for, right? Like I did a assessment. I can't remember what it is right now, but essentially at the end of the assessment, I was like testing it out for somebody. And at the report from the assessment was like, this person attempted to beat the assessment. And I was like, you know what? You're not wrong. So good for them that they figured it out, but because that's what I was testing it for. Yeah, the person was like, I hate interviewing HR people because they know exactly how to show up, exactly what to say, you know what I mean? And so it is very different for somebody that is just showing up and they're nervous. And it breaks my heart when people are nervous. They're nervous and they are not being their best self. And so that also incredibly frustrates me when a hiring manager will either snap judge somebody on their resume because they're not professional resume writers, nor did they hire one, or they'll say, I didn't really get a good vibe from them in the interview. That, they didn't talk much or they seem nervous or whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I mean, they would like to get this job so that they can sustain their addiction to food, shelter, and clothing. So maybe we'll give them another chance to talk to people because it's nerve wracking to go through the process.
I agree. Just to say, not to argue with you, Nicole, not all HR people know exactly what to say in interviews. We know, I think recruiters and, anybody under that HR umbrella likely knows how they're supposed to show up. But depending upon, going back to what we were talking about before this, depending upon the environment and the person that you're interviewing, you can have all the best intentions, but it can be really, really thrown off. And I think that really goes back to why it's so important to create these, um, inclusive spaces for people so that
Mhm.
you have the opportunity to show up, as their best self.
Right. Yeah, that candidate experience is so incredibly important. So you've built your reputation around candidate experience. You've written a lot about it, you've spoken a lot about it. What are companies still getting wrong, and what's one practical shift that they could make today?
Well, as you know, I'm a job seeker and a recruiter today.
Mhm.
So I've seen it from both lenses, especially in the last, 4 or 5 years. I would say one of the biggest shifts is a mindset
Mhm.
team. And it's not even the actual interviews. It's a mindset shift for how are we writing our job posts to
Mhm.
track the right candidates. Because once we do that, we typically as an organization have an idea for sourcing strategy to also go try and find the folks.
Right.
But it's not one thing because it's also involves training and continued training and reminders because not every hiring manager hires all the time or consistently, right? So for for recruiters, I would say where we can um, make a shift within our organization is to um, change the narrative and the focus, and we need to change the perception
Mhm.
of what recruiting is and what we do. We are not order takers. Jackie Clayton, we both know her.
Love her.
You love her. Spent a few years working with her, and she would say, "This isn't a deli counter. We're not order takers." And that's so true. And to take it further, we're strategic partners. We are
Mhm.
advisors. We need to build trust, though, first,
Mhm.
and relationships with our hiring teams. And the thing about hiring in business is that everything needs to happen all at once. And oftentimes, we should have hired somebody a month ago, right?
Yeah.
And there's not even a job posted. So for me, it's creating those relationships
Mhm.
and building from there. I truly believe that you can have the greatest, we can map out a candidate experience in an interview process, but if we're
Mhm.
not aligned behind the scene about the job, the
Yeah.
expectations, how we're going to interview, and what is appropriate interviewing,
Mhm.
right? The rest of it is still going to create a negative candidate experience. So
Yeah.
it starts with the basics.
It does. Yeah. Well, and when you are not a cohesive team and you're not working together, everybody in that process knows that. They can feel it through the multiple people reaching out to the same person. And now it's like, well, you're clearly not even communicating about, the process and what's going on. Like all of those things make up either a positive or a really challenging or negative candidate experience. So I agree with you 100%. Having that relationship cohesive and people who have a mutual respect for not only each other as people and professionals, but for their individual pieces in the process, I think is incredibly important.
Well, and
Yeah.
just to add to that, I also would love to just say that intakes, this intake is
Yes.
so important. And one of the questions that I always ask in an intake when I am working with a new hiring manager
Hmm.
is I start with what has your experience been working with recruiters or interviewing, or I want to know what it's like before they met me. Uh, so that because I try to meet people where they are, and build from there so that I am also not having um I'm not relying on assumption,
Yes.
assuming someone has had the experience of working with an experienced recruiter. Yeah.
Right.
Um Working with an in-house recruiter versus working with maybe an agency, there's nuance, there's differences. Having an experienced recruiter is also, if you have one, rely on them,
Yeah.
lean on them. I mean, we've seen it all.
Yes.
I mean, and that's the HR in general, but from the recruiter lens, I think we can really, really double down on relationships
Hmm.
internally because that's when, once we've earned that trust, once we've built those relationships internally, that's where the magic happens. That's when we can start introducing hiring managers that may not have experienced inclusive interviewing or maybe haven't brushed up their interviewing skills in quite some time, right? But the only way we're going to bring these people along with us is if we meet them where they are first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are you learning about the current job search experience from both sides of the table? Because it is a jungle out there.
It is. I have learned this year specifically in 2025 as a job seeker, in the HR field, right? In
Hmm.
recruitment, HR under that umbrella specifically, yes, we need to apply for the jobs, but regardless of what those unemployment numbers look like, there are so many people that are underemployed and
Yes.
unemployed right now. Companies are being inundated with applications. There's just no way that they can humanly go through all of them in an
Right.
appropriate time to hire quickly, right?
Right.
So interview processes are taking longer, but
Hmm.
also networking is so important. I can tell you this year, I've applied for several positions. I have heard back from one that I applied for, and that's all I did. But I've been consistently interviewing for the
Hmm.
last 5 or 6 weeks now, and I'll be honest, I applied for the roles, but networking is what got me the interview.
Yeah.
Or I was sourced.
Yes.
A recruiter reached out to me, they saw
Right.
my experience and then encouraged me to apply, in the process went from there. I think that's that's not new news, right? But it's definitely, I think, in the white collar labor
Yeah.
market specifically,
Yeah.
um, and level wise and experience wise, I think if you're maybe beyond sort of that mid level, networking is there's so much competition out there, especially with all these technological advancements and many companies believing that I don't want to say that everyone thinks they can replace people, but that they can, create more efficient people, which
Hmm.
could then maybe reduce headcount. And we're going through this just very interesting time where we haven't completely found out what the ramifications are, um,
Yes.
for organizations not putting the time in first to truly understand the technology and make sure they have the right people that understand the technology before launching or using that technology. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of technology, especially as used for a support tool, but there's so many extremely important human interactions that happen in the world of work that, as a community of people, we're testing the limits on that right now. And I think that what we're experiencing now, especially job seekers,
Yes.
is the beginning of the fallout of that. Folks that have been unemployed for over a year may say, "What do you mean the beginning?" It's gonna take more time, right? For all of the brilliant people that are bringing all of this technology to market to truly understand its impact long term, and businesses to truly understand, because there's technology for everything, but to truly understand what meets their values as an organization and their true north, like investing in the right areas. And right now I haven't done a ton of research other than just being out here in these job seeking streets. It seems organizations are trying and less skeptical about it, but they have a lot to learn still on how to harness these tools for the betterment, of their organization.
Well, and I think the Workday lawsuit is going to teach a lot of people about a lot of things, and these are going to be hard lessons that are learned.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that. I don't think no one in the HR community should have been shocked about that happening.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. So I'm just watching and listening and learning. And the other piece is the amount of regulation that we're seeing on these language models, Chat GPT and Gemini and Perplexity and Claude, and I mean, you name it, right? And maybe your chat history wasn't deleted. Maybe your chat history is not fully private just to you. It's not your dear diary. If you ask Chat GPT if it was illegal or discriminatory for you to do XYZ, there is a record of you asking that. You know what I mean? Like this kind of, I mean, thoughts and prayers to anybody that thought that they were going to get away with having an HR department with Chat GPT and somebody with no experience just because they were cheaper. What on earth are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, or for writing your job descriptions. But I will say, where these tools like really excel are creating outlines, are creating
Yes.
drafts.
Right.
But we cannot just use these tools and assume
Right.
that they're not hallucinating and making up information, or but also that they're accurate, because
Yes.
these tools are learning from input, and, bias aside, there is there's misinformation in there all the time. Because I can literally, the other day, I just tried it just to see. I asked ChatGPT to write an entire blog post. I gave it like 6 bullet points, not even sentences, and it wrote a blog post in my voice because I've been using it I've just been raw, typing my blog post, and then I throw it into ChatGPT to check for grammar, remove redundancies, spell check, all that kind of stuff. But because I've been doing that, it knows my blog voice. So there were the keywords, that it used the word keen. Anytime I see keen in an outreach in mail or email or in anything on the internet, I'm assuming ChatGPT, was in.
Yeah. Keen and kindly. If somebody kindly wants to follow up, I'm like, I am talking to a bot. That is all there is to it. Yeah.
But yeah, I was a little shocked, I'll be honest. It sounded a lot like me, but it's been learning me this year. I've been using it here to do my editing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll copy and paste something in and I'll say, like, my big thing is I have a lot of ideas. I want to get it organized in a better way. And so I'll paste it in and I'll be like, improve the readability of this, right? Like, I want better organize my thoughts. Like, because maybe I was talking about something and then I'm talking about something else. And I'm like, oh, yeah, by the way, I want to make sure that I mentioned that. Like, attention span of an etch a sketch, right? So I'll say, improve the readability of this, and it'll spat something out. But the funny thing, and I've been reading and learning about this as well, is there are a lot of critics right now about ChatGPT 5, and they're saying it's hallucinating. And I experienced it yesterday. So I put something in and I was like, improve the readability of this. And it gave me something back out, and I added in some more notes and I was like, try again, whatever. And it put something out, and I point blank said, you are hallucinating.
Mhm.
Don't make up information. And it goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I had this error and whatever. And I was like, read the things that it comes back with and don't just copy and paste and put it into something, because, yeah. And I've heard people saying that, like with ChatGPT 5, they're having issues with hallucinating and with whatever. And so I'm like,
Interesting. Yeah,
keep an eye on it.
and I think, in no way are either of us saying that ChatGPT or any of these tools are bad. It's just
No,
we as
you think
HR,
me? It's my best friend. We
yeah,
talk all the time.
but in
We talk all
HR,
the time.
in the world of
Yes.
work, we have to make sure, not just HR, the world of work in general, we have to
Yes.
make sure that the tools that we're using to support us, to make us more efficient,
Right.
are truly doing what they're intended to do and
Right.
aren't, um, unintentionally moving us in a direction that could cost a lawsuit or
Yes.
or worse, put a company out of business
Right. Yeah.
because we wanted to save half a head count. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
And at what cost?
Yeah.
And we don't know the long-term effects. I mean, not to get too, conspiracy theorists on here, but we also don't know where literally any of that information is going. And so, can we all please make sure that we're not putting anything private, proprietary, whatever, no matter where you're putting it? Don't do that, because there is no guarantee to privacy with any of it.
Mhm.
And that's what I worry about when people use it like a diary, or when they're using it like a career coach or whatever. I'm like,
Or most
get
recent,
that stuff out of there.
sorry to cut you off, but you talk about
You're fine.
career coach. Most recently, correct me if I'm wrong, we may have to go back and look this up afterwards, but
All
I
right.
believe it's Chicago that just finally put a law into place about using AI as like a therapist. Did you read about that?
I did not, but I'm going to go look it up.
I can't recite enough about it I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't have brought it up, but I think that we're going
I'm
to
looking it up.
see legislation on more than just writing job posts or,
Yeah.
just like in work, but like We're seeing, I don't know what this says about me, but I keep getting advertisements um, for the AI boyfriend. In that, like, where you somebody clearly, you know,
That gives me anxiety.
the internet knows I'm single, but are are so off-putting to me personally.
Yeah.
No knocking anybody who wants to do something like that, but for me, I'm like, way to
Mm-mm.
go with targeting your marketing, because yes, I am a single person, but that's my fear for us as a humanity, that we lose relationships, friendships, like connections with people, and start relying emotionally on AI.
People that aren't people that aren't there. Yeah. I learned that, I mean, SEO's been around forever and ever, and you can pay and you can whatever, but now you can index
Yep.
AI as well. And so that becomes different, because now how is that any different than, it makes sense and it is not surprising, because as Google was like, well, people used to Google everything, and now I mean, there's commercials on it, right? Like, hey, Perplexity, tell me what to do, right? People have been talking to Siri for years, but you never got as solid as a result of what you get when you talk to one of the large language models. But yeah, now you can index AI now and pay for that. And it's a little wild, because you even more so need to validate it, vet it, just make sure that you're not getting something completely made up that somebody else paid for to get. I mean, it's like, what is the Wikipedia? Like how you're not allowed to use Wikipedia as a scholarly source in any college classes. That's because you can literally go in there and edit it and make it up. So what's to say that people aren't going to pay to index a large language model to have their narrative, whatever that needs to be, in there? And I mean, and the videos are so realistic. I'm like, I don't believe anything I see anymore.
Well, and I think you bring up, this is such an
I love this
important
tangent that we
topic.
just went on.
Yeah, topic though, because for business owners, people leaders, HR, to show up best for our employees, but also to understand our employees, like knowing what is truly going on in the world.
Right.
So much misinformation that's being shared. Uh, Politically, I mean, even about the weather, I mean, whatever, and so these are things as leaders and HR professionals that we have to navigate in order to show up for our people. Also to understand our people.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just hoping that organizations that are implementing these tools are also, doing regular, like, check-ins and training updates with their employees. Because again, I'm a fan of using these tools when they're used ethically and to support, right? But we have to stay on top of not only the narrative that this is a support tool, but also on top of, and not necessarily fear mongering, but like, here are some potential hazards that we want to avoid these pitfalls, or we help our employees navigate through, because there have been some very large news cycles over the last 10 years, with not just fake information, but especially in the last 4 or 5 years, with across social media videos, like you said, that look so real, but they're
And they're
not.
not real. And it was completely made. And I'm in some groups, and they are posting on like a daily basis of like, this is the new video that I came up with. And it is basically like my AI body double. And that also is a little bit like, people should be nervous about that. If you're creating a video in your likeness, where is that being stored? Like, if it can create that, what's to say that that can't also be created for malicious intent as well. So I think that I agree with you. Like, the technology is amazing. You know, I'm a super nerd, and I use Chat GPT to create the show outline, right? I created a custom GPT. I add in the intake form and the transcript from our prior conversation, and it does it based on what I told it to do, right? But I'm not so naive to think that we still need to be real, like, eyes wide open of what we're putting into that. And there's no law against it lying to us.
No, and we will continue to see legislation and
Yes.
the government get more involved in it,
Right.
which I think could, good and bad
Right.
ramifications on that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like you said, eyes wide open.
Yes. Eyes wide open, verify. It's always like that, trust but verify, right? Don't even trust. Verify first. Verify first. You can trust later after you verify and double verify and make sure that you've got some independent data point that verifies the information. And also, just maybe don't use it for stuff that you don't know enough now about to be able to verify. That's probably another other thing. So, thinking about your message and talking to prospective employers, colleagues, our broader community, what do you want them to know about you?
You know, I would say I love creating inclusive hiring experiences, not just I say I'm unapologetically obsessed with candidate experience. I am. I wasn't always unapologetically obsessed with hiring team experience. I'll be honest with that. um, but I've learned to be that as well because it is so important, like we were talking earlier, to truly build relationships with your hiring teams. I bring, over 12 years of recruiting experience, but I think there isn't one superpower or one strength of mine that is the only one that I can bring with me, but I bring something that I think is often undervalued, and that's adaptability. I bring a, a lifelong learner mentality. I love micro learning, learning as I go. I love building processes. But at the end of the day, my superpower is meeting people where they are and growing from there. And that is how I fell in love with recruiting because I do love people. I do enjoy creating an environment where everyone can show up as their best self. And as I've learned along my own journey, we, talked about learning that I was neurodivergent in 2013. It hasn't even been 4 years since I also found out I have autism. So going that journey and learning more about myself has just, I guess I've doubled down on not only creating efficient processes where we can get people hired, but processes that really inspire people. We can't hire everyone, but I can tell you that you're doing it right if the people that you've interviewed and haven't hired are thanking you, are staying in touch with you. Like I have built this huge network of people around me, whether I've been able to hire them or I've hired in the past, again in the future. That for me, at the end of the day, I don't just bring recruiting shero, but I bring someone that is going to listen and that is adaptable, and who wants not only to be successful myself, but I want wherever I'm working. I'm a ride or die for for the company that I work for. I'm going to be an evangelist for wherever I work, and everyone's going to know where I'm working. Don't believe me, you can talk to the last few CEOs that I've worked for. And because I'm not going to work somewhere where I can't do that, right?
Right.
Like, it's very important to me that where I work, you know, that I align with the company's mission and values and vice versa.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for showing up with such clarity and courage This episode is a powerful reminder that behind every resume is a real person, and the work of hiring is about so much more than filling a role. So if you're listening and you're thinking, I want to connect with Rachel, where can people best find you?
Well, with a quick Google search, with Rachel Kitty Cupples, you can find me, but I'm everywhere. I have a website. I think, Nicole, you mentioned my blog, recruitzero.com. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram. Might be the quickest way to find me through my website, recruitingshero.com, where I have all the links in there to all my social media. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. Under Rachel Cupples.
Okay. And we will link to all of those things in the show notes. Thank you for joining me today and sharing your story. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you for 6 more hours.
Ever and ever, right?
We didn't even talk about cats.
We didn't even, oh my gosh, how did we do?
No cats or no daughters. That's usually what we talk about.
That is true. That is usually what we talk about is cats and daughters. Yeah. Yeah. As one of them is looking at me right now, like, okay, what's going on? Yeah, it is. It's Minnie in the window. Yes. Yep. She sure is. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Nicole.
Thank you. And thank you to our listener for joining as we amplify voices, elevate stories, and support one another one episode at a time.
Pages blank, but hearts alive. Through their journeys, they still strive. Tales of passion, grit, and grace. Every journey leaves its trace.